needs. Like, for example, like when countries specifically endorse like green policies, like it encourages like their country citizens and like also like their workforce to like innovate in order to like accommodate for like green energy and like be able to like solve for the mitigations of like climate change. And so like again, this generates more jobs on average, like tens and thousands of jobs. Like green deals like up to like five, like depending on like the like magnitude is like it goes up to like 50,000 to 100,000 jobs like generated on average by green new deals or like green projects. And the impact is like significantly like reinvesting into the environment and like also helping the Pakistani government, which is like also significantly like the economy has been harmed and crashed because of like the $30 billion cost of these floods and climate change. So for these reasons, both.
Are you done, Vaibhava?
I think
you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who is Joel Jacobs? Is that the another judge?
Yes.
Sure, no
No worries.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries, you're good.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So once again, my name is Ria. I will be the first speaker for the negation side of this debate. And yeah. All right, if everybody's ready, my 8 minutes will start now. We negate the resolution that the United States federal government should roll out a Green Marshall Plan for the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Let's go into the top of case where my opponents give us a couple definitions. First of all, they tell us that the Green Marshall Plan will be enacted by the world leaders and will include 10 different compartments. But not only do they not tell us what these compartments are, they also don't tell us which leaders of the world they specifically refer to, even after asking them a POI. They simply say that there will be leaders from many countries. Now, since we don't know which leaders that these are, we're going to assume that the United States is going to be one of them. But even besides that, it's important to note that this plan has not actually happened yet. So we don't know what's going to occur when the Green Marshall Plan is rolled out. That being said, let's jump straight into our first argument, which is on the disadvantage. Now, our disadvantage is on the economy. Let's start with a little bit of a uniqueness. Previously, the Marshall Plan was enacted after World War I and was a series of funds given to the European countries by the United States in order to help pay off their war debts. However, the main purpose of the Marshall Plan, rather than being some sort of debt forgiveness program, was instead a corporate welfare program for United States businesses through Tide Aid, which would help the United States businesses, allowing money to go to the United States products, but instead hurt EU industries. Think about it this way, Judge. Why would the United States give a ton of free money, $100 billion, to countries around the world if there was nothing in it for them? Well, I'm telling you what their incentive was, and it was to help their own country. It was to help their own businesses and population. I'll take it out the end of this contention. First of all, we can see that this crowds out the domestic industry, especially within the COVID-19 and economic crisis. We can see that when the United States and other countries implement this Marshall Plan in Pakistan, what they really hope to do is open up Pakistan's markets for more and more trade intervention for the United States businesses to go into Pakistan and be able to sell their cheap products in there in order to get more money. For example, let's look to how in Greece this also happened. When U.S. tobacco was exported to Greece, we saw that it led to Greek tobacco exports decreasing by 17,000 tons in 1947, and the industry never recovered. This is just one of the many examples that happens when the United States tries to crowd out a domestic industry by entering itself in the foreign market and placing itself there firmly. So what happens when the plan passes? We see that the United States builds its own cheap, renewable, and infrastructure industries, pushing out Pakistan's own industries and their billion-dollar markets in order to have their own goods be bought. In addition, we can see that the industries have a very low probability of recovery, which means that it is unlikely that Pakistan will ever be able to get out of its debt-ridden self. And finally, third, we see a drop in the economy. We see the domestic economy is taken over by foreign actors and it cannot even build up afterward, which means that ultimately, we impact to a loss of the economy as well as increased poverty for the Pakistani people. I can take your POI.
Great. Sorry. Could you explain how exactly the Marshall Plan only benefits corporations?
Yeah, so it doesn't only benefit corporations. The argument that we were making was not that it benefits them, but specifically that the reason that the Marshall Plan was created was for the companies to benefit in the first place, because the loans to European countries, and actually this is a great time for me to expand on that. The Marshall Plan, when it was given as loans to European countries, it was given so these American businessmen would be able to profit off of this. And this is actually why, after the Marshall Plan took place, after World War I, the United States emerged as the leading actor. It was the one who was number one in its economy. All these other countries were secondary, and they couldn't recover for many, many years until like before World War II. They couldn't recover for that many years because their markets were being taken over. All right, that being said, let's jump straight into the counterplan. The counterplan is this. The United States federal government will roll out a green Marshall Plan for the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, provided that Pakistan pays for at least 50% of it. Now, what does this mean? This means that Pakistan would pay for $50 billion of the plan at the very least, and if they choose to, they can pay for more. This is competitive. My opponents may say that they can perm this counterplan, but this does not happen because I asked them a POI about who was paying for it, and they mentioned other world leaders besides Pakistan. And in addition, you cannot have all world leaders pay for this plan, as well as having Pakistan pay for half of this plan. It doesn't make sense. On to the solvency. There's 3 points here. First of all, we see that when Pakistan invests at least $50 billion into the green plan, this means that it is investing into its own industries of renewables and infrastructure. This solves for its economy because rather than funneling money into other foreign actors, Pakistan is funding it into itself. It's growing its own economy, it's growing its own jobs, and the United States and other countries are not taking the payoff. In addition, secondly, this means that Pakistan gets an increased say in the deal. Providing 50% of the money means you get 50% of the say. And that means that essentially Pakistan and these other countries are in an equal partnership. This means that instead of letting the United States take over, they can control more trade strategies. And every time the United States gives aid, even if they demand something in return, it can be up to Pakistan for negotiation instead of being pressured into acceptance. Now, finally, my opponents may come up here and say that Pakistan won't have the money to do this, but we argue that Pakistan is actually already projected to spend $37 billion on their infrastructure this year, and that's just their infrastructure alone. We argue that if they can spend $37 billion, they can also spend $50 billion, making their country a better place. With that, let's move on to the affirmative case. Judge, my opponent's first advantage was need, and I'd like to do a quick overview here. Both sides agree that climate change is a problem. We agree that the Green Deal or the Green Marshall Plan is a good idea. But the question is the funding. Who is paying for this plan? Because the reality of the matter is these things are not stringless. They come with costs. We have 3 responses. First of all, like I said before, the Pakistan budget for the industry works out because they can pay for it. Second of all, they bring up how there will be increased trade between nations, but we'd like to extend our time frame argument here on our disadvantage because once the plan passes, Pakistan will have no industry to invest into. It's more important that we're able to keep their industries afloat before we invest into them. Finally, they talk about how Pakistan is the epitome or the epicenter of carbon dioxide emissions. Judge, this makes no sense. Pakistan is not nearly one of the highest carbon dioxide emitters. China is, the United States is. And in addition, they say Pakistan is the 4th most polluted country, but pollution does not equate to climate change. Those are very, very different things. I would argue that it's even a worse idea to allow the United States to invest in this plan. Why do we trust a country with the 2nd highest number of carbon emissions to be rolling out a green Marshall Plan? It doesn't make any sense. We should trust the country with fewer carbon emissions and trust Pakistan. Let's go on to their second advantage about infrastructure. They argue that jobs will be created, but we argue that even if jobs will be created, these jobs will not help Pakistan. All these jobs will be created, they will be foreign jobs that will be offshored into these other countries. If they do create jobs, then it will all be foreign workers. In addition, they say that they will encourage innovation, but if you destroy the economy, people will not have money to innovate. Finally, we also say that excluding Pakistan means that from the funding means that all of the innovation cater to the United States and the countries funding it instead of helping Pakistan grow as a country. So if you want to help Pakistan grow as a country on its own, not just be reliant on these foreign actors, create jobs for its people, and help stop climate change, we urge the negation is the way to go. Thank you, and please vote for the negative.
Great. Brief off-time moment before I begin. My name is Sophia Zhang. I am the second speaker for the affirmation. Order for the speech will probably just be like a brief overview to the round, and then the aff case top down, and then the neg case. Is anyone not ready? Okay, great. My time starts now. First, let's first talk about the framework for this debate. Our opponent agrees that you should be evaluating this debate based on net benefits, which means the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of reason. They tell you that we aren't exactly clear in defining what exactly the Marshall Plan is, and that they asked a POI. We would about like the divisions and things. My partner literally stated like specific divisions from biodiversity to pollution, and our opponents never asked us which specific leading countries. They just asked us like which countries are part of this. I mean, they just asked us like who is a part of this, and we said like many different leading countries. To answer their question, it's like includes the US, it includes like many of the European countries, includes like other global powers, like Canada, Australia. It's like the $100 billion is a fund from several global powers into like improving economic green energy and like green infrastructure development for the future to resolve the issues of climate change. Let's talk about our first advantage, which is about Pakistan and its need. We tell you that right now Pakistan is flooded terribly, and it has been since mid-June. It's killed over 1.5 thousand civilians, and it's displaced over 30 million people, and it's literally collapsed almost all of Pakistan's industries right now. We're going to tell you that they completely concede this. This is really, really important, Judge, because not only does this prove that Pakistan really needs like foreign aid right now, it also means that their entire argument about like Pakistani industries like getting co-opted or getting like bought out doesn't make sense when all of their industries are literally destroyed because of the flooding they are currently enduring. We also, Judge, tell you that currently like Pakistan is a big source. We tell you this is also really bad because we tell you that like their flooding is a primary result of climate change, which is another reason why resolving for climate change is so important. The second point, Judge, here we tell you is that Pakistani's pollution is really bad right now. We tell you it's the fourth most polluted country in the entire world, which is really, really high considering there's so many other like countries in the world like the US and China. Our opponent responds by saying that pollution doesn't equate to climate change, and we would agree. But what pollution does indicate is that like Pakistani citizens are not living in a good like green country right now because the air they're breathing in is probably really polluted, which leads to lung damage, which obviously indicates that Pakistan needs to change its ways to better civilians. We also tell you that Pakistan is a contributor to global carbon emitters. They tell you this isn't true because the US and China emits more. But we tell you that, even if Pakistan isn't emitting the most right now, we tell you that its emissions have literally expanded 20 times just in the last decade. It is rapidly growing on the list of carbon polluters, which is pretty clear that we want to derail that right now. So on to the links. We have really, really clear links for you. First, Judge, we tell you that when Pakistan gets funding from the Green Marshall Plan, right, we tell you this means that like Pakistan gets more green, it has access to more like patents that currently like the countries that are currently deposited in the Green Marshall Plan that gives us access to more and new innovating like climate technologies, right, that it could then implement, that it could then produce and therefore like resolve its current pollution, be it like climate, be it like new systems that like pollute less, for example, that pollute less and produce more energy, like green energy systems. We also tell you that it's really, really key because specifically like a large part of this Green Marshall Plan funding could literally go towards like reinforcing like Pakistan's like current irrigation systems, right? We tell you that like specifically like making it so that it's like making it so that there's more like there's better draining systems, which is absolutely key in resolving like in preventing future like erosions, future incidents like this entire flood, right? Where like if all of its infrastructure is more like flood protected, is more protected from natural climate disaster, just means that Pakistan won't face like complete industry collapse like in the future like it does right now after this flood. It's more protected. This is really, really important, not only just to resolve climate change impacts, which are absolutely enormous and implicate people all over the world, but just to help better like the Pakistanis peoples and their lives. Moving on to our second argument about the economy, we tell you that this Green Marshall Plan is uniquely key because it creates more infrastructure projects within Pakistan. and leads to more innovation within the Pakistani industries. Our opponent has a few responses to this, right? The first response here is we tell you that it would like create something from like 50,000 to 100,000 jobs. Our opponent's first argument here is that these jobs won't help Pakistan because they will be offshored into foreign jobs. We would tell you that a large part of building new infrastructure is literally construction jobs. This is what's going to help the working class Pakistani the most, and this is pretty clearly going to help Pakistanis. We're going to tell you, like, in historical precedent, right? Like when the Marshall Plan passed in the Europe, right? Like it did not lead to more offshoring jobs from the United States. It led to more employment in Europe itself. We tell you that they don't provide any evidence for why offshoring will happen, and it's a pretty weak response. Second argument is that like this will destroy the economy, but we would tell you that like currently this absolutely isn't the case insofar it's pretty clearly empirically beneficial to the economy and producing more innovation, producing more jobs, and also that like there is almost nothing to destroy in Pakistan right now insofar as its green industries are almost absolutely like non-existent, and its industries are completely like broken up because of the flood that's literally led the government to like be $30 billion more in debt. Let's move on to the neg case. Let's first talk about the disadvantage of the economy. The first point they talk about is how the Marshall Plan is uniquely bad because it basically leads to like unfair like loan repayment and benefits U.S. corporations the most. And they use this historical example of the Marshall Plan after World War I. We're going to tell you that we're going to tell you this isn't the best argument, Judge, because we're going to tell you that they completely misconstrued the historical impact of the Marshall Plan by implying that it somehow like only boosted the U.S. economy and destroyed European economies, when the opposite is the case. Historians overall completely agree that the Marshall Plan was exactly what was absolutely key to reviving European countries and their economies after World War I. Because while the United States survived after World War I, because they were a strong actor in World War I, they weren't involved. European countries like Britain were like primary fighters in World War I that absolutely drained their economy. So the Marshall Plan was absolutely key to helping countries like Britain rebuild. And in that time, Judge, these Western European countries experienced a rise in their gross national products of 15 to 25% in this period, and greatly contributed to the rapid renewal of Western European chemical engineering and steel industries. It's literally what empowered Germany to like rise up and become another power again for the Second World War. It's pretty clear that the Marshall Plan is empirically successful and in the past. To talk to you about how it's going to crowd out domestic industries, but not only has like empirics proven, Judge, that like this only benefits domestic industries, but second of all, like it's key to first create these domestic industries which have already collapsed in the status quo. That's what's happened in the status quo right now. It's key to actually like create benefits for these domestic industries, and only through that, only the AF plan does that. As a result, it's pretty clear that like you can't access their impacts because our plan passing does not in fact lead to economic collapse. It only leads to economic renewal, and it prevents because not only does it prevent like future economic collapse from climate change again, but it also leads to more boosts in their climate change technology, and it leads to decreased pollution. Onto their counter plan. They tell you that this is really important because this gives like Pakistan more bargaining leverage. We're going to tell you that this isn't really the case because like the green plan is a no strings attached like plan. Like they're depositing this for funds. This is why Pakistan's government is actively asking for the plan. They're actively asking the United States to like enroll this plan on them. If they thought this would be like really bad for them in the future, they wouldn't be doing this. They understand the need that like Pakistan needs right now. We're also going to tell you that it's pretty clear that like Pakistan doesn't actually have the funds for this, because not only was Pakistan already struggling to pay back the $1 billion of the $10 billion they owed the Paris Club at the end of this year, right? Which has been made really, really worse by the new $30 billion they owe because of the flood. But the entire like $37 billion are expected to spend on their infrastructure that the negation tells you about, we're going to tell you is probably also from like other loans and investments within the Pakistan economy and its industries by foreign actors. They aren't like paying for their infrastructure with their own domestically generated money. They're paying for it with loans from other countries. So asking Pakistan to pay for the $15 billion isn't going to have like Pakistan magically conjure up $50 billion. It only means that they're going to have more loans, more borrowing from other countries that leads to this $50 billion. That reason is pretty clear that like even if you buy the negations plan about like resolving like debt burdens to the Pakistan, for their counter plan to work, they only increase these debt burdens. For all those reasons, Judge, I strongly urge an affirmative ballot for today's debate. Thank you. Oh yeah.
Thank you. Just one, the call out. Your connection was disrupting in between. So if you girls want to go off of video, that's okay too.
Could I know, sorry, exactly like which places the connection was like disrupted?
It will
Sorry,
be
like, do you remember
difficult.
what I was like kind of talking about?
This is just for a few seconds, but at least I think 5 or 6 times it was disrupted is what at
Oh,
least I experienced. Not sure if
okay. I see. Yeah.
but pretty much I
It's
was
okay,
able to
whatever.
get everything because
Okay.
it was just for a few seconds. Yeah, maybe 1 second at a time or so.
Okay. Hello, Judge. My name is Samantha Gandhi. I will be the second neg speaker. As an off-time roadmap, I'll be going into an overview of the AF case before moving on to their advantages in order, and then the counterplan, and then the neg disadvantage. All right. With that, I will start my time now. My opponents argue that Pakistan is going through a lot of flooding, which is damaging their economy. We agree. We still do the plan of giving the Green Marshall Plan. We still help the infrastructure. We still help solve for the flooding. We still help mitigate climate change. But we prevent Pakistan's domestic industry from falling and collapsing as a result of the US crowding out industries. The reason why this is going to happen is because when the US gives the conducts like the Green Marshall Plan, it will provide cheap, renewable energy, which will take away from the domestic industries within Pakistan itself, which means that they have like low probability of A, even having an industry, and B, if they do have an industry, limited probability of it actually recovering again. With that, let's go on to the AF case on their first argument about need. My opponents argue that Pakistan needs foreign aid and its industries are destroyed. I have two responses here. The first is that with the $50 billion, Pakistan will be able to build up its own industry. Some investment is needed, but at the end, there's going to be a net benefit to Pakistan itself. So there may be some investment, but at the end of the day, there'll be greater benefits. Second, with the foreign aid, the US is basically exploiting them at a weak state because it's going to be the US interest in Pakistan. It's going to be all those countries' interests that are being given, that are funding the Green Marshall Plan to Pakistan, which means that Pakistan has no chance of having an industry with the plan because all of its industries are going to be crowded out. They're not going to have like any money to build itself back up again, which we have to think of the long-term future of the country. On to the second advantage of infrastructure. My opponents argue that a large part of building the infrastructure is going to help the Pakistan's government. However, look to the China's Belt and Road Initiative. It took out poor workers and put them out of a job. So when the US goes in, it's going to be using like foreign workers. It's not going to be creating a new industry in Pakistan itself. Rather, it's going to be destroying its economy. Second, my opponents argue that when we have this Green Marshall Plan, we're going to be increasing innovation. However, you can turn this argument. All the innovation, all the patents, all of this is going to be catered to the United States and will be taken by the US. If the US is the one funding the plan, it's going to be doing stuff that is advantageous to its country. The reason why we need to have Pakistan partially funding the plan is so that it has a say in where the money goes and has a say in the innovation created. Now let's go on to the counterplan, which is that we're going to be saying that Pakistan has to provide for at least 50% of the Green Marshall Plan. My opponents argue that it has a no strings attached to the plan. However, we say that when the U.S. Always wants to intervene in the market. If it's giving money to a country, it has an inclination to invest in the country, push out domestic industries, and really become the true leader of that country. But we're going to be saying that if Pakistan is funding a part of it, it's going to be having a greater say. Second, my opponents argue that we're going to be paying through loans, and loans are going to be bad. But even if they have loans, they still have leverage over the market. The big argument here is that of leverage. Paying for the plan gives Pakistan leverage, and that's going to be really important to prevent economic collapse. Yes.
So, like, what difference is it if they get loans from the Green Marshall Plan to fund green development? How's that any worse than them getting loans from the United States to get their $50 billion to like pause it in the Green Marshall Plan?
We're going to be saying that with the Green Marshall Plan, you have like a lot of these like foreign countries, including the United States, giving money to Pakistan, which means that all of these countries are now having greater leverage over the Pakistan's domestic industry, which is going to be bad because it's going to be causing this huge collapse, which we explained in our disadvantage. So with that, let's go on to the disadvantage, which is that of the economy. As an overview, look back to the example Ria gave you of Greece. when the Marshall Plan was instituted in the 1940s, we saw that while the exports of the U.S. tobacco to Greece increased, but Greece tobacco exports decreased by 17,000 tons, and the industry never recovered. Why? It's because the U.S. pushed out the industry, pushed out the tobacco industry, pushed out those domestic industries, and as a result, it was never able to recover. We must look to the past precedent as the best example of future success. Even if future success, and even if it may have helped, and in other countries besides Greece, it took a really long time for those countries to recover. So Greece is an example of where it never recovered, and in several other countries in the European Union, it took a very long time to recover. And secondly, my opponents provide they said that we have no empirics, no examples to prove. We provide you the Greece example. My opponents provide you no example of it actually working when the US gave money. So with that, let's go on to some weighing. Judge, when you're evaluating the counterplan over the plan, you're going to be voting for the counterplan for 3 reasons. Number 1, we create jobs for Pakistan. 100% jobs created for Pakistan and not for other countries. When Pakistan is paying 50%, we are creating those domestic jobs. Second, we prevent crowding out. We prevent US from exploiting Pakistan and pushing out domestic industries, which means we solve for those. Third, we solve for the long-term future. By preventing crowding out, we sustain industries and we encourage innovation that's going to be helpful in the future of the economy. Lastly, let's do some world-by-world weighing. In the AF world, money is used to build cheap, renewable energy that pushes out the domestic market. Industry is never able to recover, and as a result, it has a worse economy, which means that we can never solve for climate change because we need to have a good economy to solve for that. Whereas in the neg world, Pakistan grows its own economy, we encourage its long-term growth, and having a long-term stable economy is going to be important to solve for climate change and solve for all of those impacts. Thus, Judge, if you want to solve for Pakistan's domestic industry, if you want to solve for its domestic economy, and if you want to solve for climate change, I strongly urge you to vote for the neg.
All right. Hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Ria Jane. I'll be the final speaker for the negation in today's debate. And as a brief off-time roadmap, my order will be doing an overview, going over some key affirmative arguments, going over some negation arguments, and then weighing both sides of the debate. All right. With that, I have 4 minutes, and my time starts now. At the end of this debate, my opponent's biggest mistake is that they simply do not spend enough time on the counterplan, and yet they spend too much time defending the Marshall Plan itself. Once again, Judge, I would like to reiterate that both of us are on the same page here. Both of us agree in the Marshall Plan. Both of us agree with its benefits. But the problem is they don't see the one issue that the Marshall Plan does not address, which is that it forces this crowding out of businesses in the domestic markets because of foreign actors. Not only has this happened in the previous Marshall Plan, but it happens time and time again. It happens every time a foreign actor, especially the United States, sends something in to go and give a loan like the Marshall Plan with no strings attached. But like I said before, there is always a string attached, and that string is their long-term economy. Let's go on to this debate and talk about what the key arguments are here. We're going to be voting on net benefits, which is the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. They bring up 3 major reasons why we need other countries to fund the Marshall Plan instead of Pakistan. First, they talk about innovation. They say that other countries need to funnel this money so we can innovate. But I ask you, if we innovate, who is getting the patent for that? It's certainly not Pakistan. It is the United States. It is Denmark, it is France, it is every other country that has a stake except for Pakistan. And what does that mean? This means that we fundamentally turn their argument, because even if we create tons and tons of new renewable energy in their world, there is no way that that money will go to Pakistan in the long term. Secondly, they say that foreign aid is needed to build up an industry. But like we already said, we are starting this industry from scratch. Remember, $50 billion is a lot to build up an industry. And not just that, but if we don't allow Pakistan to have a stake in its industry, we are allowing the United States to exploit them at their most weak state and take advantage of them when they don't have one. Finally, third, they bring up the economic recovery point, the point that says this Green Marshall Plan will help bring back their economy. But like we said over and over again, historically speaking, this is not proof. It took over 50 years for some countries to recover from the Marshall Plan. And in some places like Greece, which was never responded to, they simply do not come back. Once again, Judge, I would like to reiterate the strong historical example we give about Greece, which is when the United States entered its markets, Greece tobacco exports dropped by 17,000 tons in just 1 year, and they haven't recovered since. That is a unique reason to vote for the neg, because there is no way that these Pakistan businesses of renewable energy infrastructure, you name it, will be able to recover. So on the counterplan, the three reasons we believe you should vote for us on the counterplan have been pretty well established by Tamanna herself. She talks about how it increases the amount of say that Pakistan gets in their own economy. It increases the long-term innovation and patents. And finally, it ensures that we create jobs for Pakistani people. But what does this mean at the end of the day? This means that if we can compare the ending impacts, we can see that in the probability, there is a much higher probability of the creation of jobs for Pakistani people, whereas in the AF world, there is very, very little probability that these jobs will be going to all of them will be going to Pakistan. On the magnitude level, we solve for magnitude because by saving the domestic industries, we create the internal link to solving for the economy. And if all industries are destroyed, there is no way we can solve climate change. But finally, the biggest reason why we believe you should vote for the neg is on time frame. Because yes, they might win that in the short term, Pakistan improves its economy. But we have seen what happens to the people and the businesses that suffer in that economy. In the long term, Pakistan's economy will fall to moot. The people will fall into poverty and the businesses will struggle because of this claim. If you want to solve for flooding, if you want to solve for people's suffering, vote for the team that helps Pakistan. Don't vote for the short term, vote for the long term, vote for the neg. Thank you.
All right. The affirmations voter speech. I'll be going ahead and touching on the main issues of today's debate and doing some more. Is everyone ready? All right. Assuming that everyone's ready, my time will begin now. Judge, it is clear that the affirmation wins this debate on all ends, but let's go ahead and touch on some key voter issues and some moments of clash. So first off, one of the biggest issues of today's debate is industries and economy, whether passing the specific deal will crowd out Pakistan's innovation and involvement within their own green industry. Now, the negotiation brings us a precedent of the Marshall Plan, specifically Greece, but this is the only example that they specifically bring up. But the affirmation wins this because of the fact that historians have censuses about the Marshall Plan and rebuilding, which specifically state that Europe was actually advantaged by the United States getting involved and actually grew their economy. And specifically, we've stated that this improved their GDP by 25% by rebuilding chemical engineering and steel industries, and specifically helping those are European countries.
Point of order, time. I believe we may have missed it, but I'm pretty sure there was no statistic of 25% improvement of GDP or anything like that mentioned previously.
I am very confident. I
agree with what Ria was saying. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, was this possibly a time when I cut off then? Okay.
Possibly.
Okay. I'll just go ahead and continue. Okay. So this completely turns their argument of crowding out industries because of the fact that their only argument is Greece, and that's one industry. When we told you that historians have the census that the Marshall Plan was very key to rebuilding economies, and this will not cause a crowding out. They also can see the fact that the industries and the jobs that will be created in the first place are specifically helping those of Pakistanis. Look to the fact that my partner literally states the most amount of like jobs go to like constructions, and this not like overcrowding of like foreigners working within the industry will not necessarily happen, because like when jobs like construction or like jobs that like those specific jobs are taken on by like Pakistani citizens themselves and not necessarily like have any like United States like foreigners like come in and like do those jobs for them, like these jobs will still be created and will still be generated and will be widely available to the like wide range of like Pakistani citizens. So like this completely like does not apply. And also like look to the fact that this is like 150,000 jobs like that are being increased. There's like it's like very clear, Judge, that like these jobs are like key to like stimulating within like the economy, right? And like these industries don't necessarily matter at like the time being. You have to look at like the impact of the floods that like caused, right? Like the amount of impact that the floods have caused is like a cost of like 30 billion to the Pakistani economy. The cost of like thousands of lives, like the cost of climate change like outweighs like everything else, right? And like the Pakistani itself like wants to like partner up and wants to like be able to like have this plan funded for them. It knows like that Pakistan knows that this is like what's best for itself. Like clearly we can see like what occurs is like the way that Pakistan will be like paying if you like in like their negations counter plan, what they'd be saying is like 50% of like the money that they'd be paying for like this deal theoretically would just come out of other loans from other foreign countries and other large actors, which means in the end they will still be depending on other countries, and in the end they will still have like a lot of their money like funded by foreign like industries because of the fact that their economic status right now is on such a decline. So like their whole like dependence and like assertion of like US dominance is not something that will occur inevitably. If it's not by the United States, it'll be by some European actor that will loan out Pakistan money. And like we specifically stated, the $37 billion that like they've spent is like through loans. So we clearly see that that Pakistan does not have the sovereignty to like carry out its own industry, and it doesn't have like the sovereignty to have like the funding to further that. And like and for this reason, like literally because they can't sustain themselves means like their whole plan of like the negation is like completely cannot like be taken as like having a net benefit, because they're putting themselves further in debt and not being able to like solve for the issues of poor. Now moving on to our own case, right? So we specifically state how like Pakistan is like in desperate need of funding, and we also specifically state that like the impacts of the floods that have occurred, and like how specifically like the biggest way to improve like the Pakistani's like environment and like government itself is like investing within this plan. And we've like also like stated how Pakistani government has like increased like 20-fold in terms of like harms of climate change, right? So we specifically state all these impacts and like also like specifically how the economy is like so severely harmed. And the only way to reverse this harm is like for their plans like actually being funded for them, rather than like them like detrimenting themselves and like still having reliance on like such foreign like countries in order to like support their own industries. Like no matter what, Pakistan will be reliant on foreign industry to support themselves because of their economic states. And the biggest question is like doing it in the simplest way, which is like through our plan. For these reasons, we'll take them.
All right, thank you for a great debate, and thank you for judging.
Yeah, it was good, very interesting discussion. So great job, you both the teams really have a lot of data and insight. So very well researched topic. Good job, and I will go through my points and I will submit my vote. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.
Stay.